The Pentagon auditorium buzzed with quiet anticipation. Rows of sharply dressed officers, dignitaries, and military families sat facing the polished oak stage, where honor and ceremony were the order of the day. General Marcus Harlan stood at the front, tall and commanding in his decorated uniform, each ribbon on his chest earned across 4 decades of duty. Behind him, the American flag hung proud and unwavering. This wasn't just a medal ceremony. It was legacy in motion. A moment to remember the brave and celebrate the best. One by one, soldiers were called to receive commendations, promotions, awards. Smiles flashed, cameras clicked, families beamed. But Harlan, though he nodded and shook hands with precision, felt detached, as though he were floating just outside the moment. His mind wasn't on speeches or applause. He'd been feeling it lately. The distance. The weight. A strange sense that something from his past had unfinished business. Then came the final form. The closing signature on a commendation document. Routine, symbolic. His aide handed it to him. But protocol required a junior officer to present the ceremonial pen. It was a small gesture, a tradition. An assistant from logistics approached. She moved with grace, her dark uniform crisp, posture military perfect. Mid-20s, maybe. Light brown hair pulled into a tight bun. Calm eyes. She stepped onto the stage with quiet confidence, walked directly to the general, and held out a sleek black pen in her gloved hand. And then it happened. He took the pen, but his eyes didn't leave her hand. There it was. A ringed out silver, thick-banded, etched with a blackened skull inside a faint circle of runes or flame. Simple but unmistakable. Harlan's hand froze in midair, pen hovering inches from paper. Time slowed. That ring wasn't standard issue. It wasn't decorative. It wasn't something you wore casually, unless you knew exactly what it meant. His breath hitched, chest tightening like he'd taken a sudden blow. He knew that ring got so few did. It belonged to one group, one team, one unit that officially never existed. Reaper Team 7. Late, silent, off the books. Harlan had worked with them a decade ago, during a covert Black Ops mission in northern Syria. They were ghosts who operated in the deepest shadows, used only when Washington didn't want fingerprints. Even their names were redacted before they were written. The team's insignia had been designed internally. Each member wore a ring bearing the Reaper symbol. Not for recognition, for remembrance. A badge of belonging to something deadly, dangerous, and unspoken. You didn't find a Reaper ring in the world, not unless someone gave it to you, or died wearing it. But Reaper Team 7 was gone. Declared Kier after a disastrous mission. Blown apart by an ambush no one ever fully explained. He'd been there, not in the final strike zone, but in the sky on the extraction route. He remembered the radio cutting out. The final screams. And then, nothing. No bodies were ever found. No graves, just silence. And now, a ring had appeared on the hand of a woman barely old, enough to have been there. He looked up at her face, calm, steady. Her name tag, Reed, L.T. Kara Jennings. The name meant nothing to him. Her record, as far as he could recall, was clean. Admin background, logistics. But there was something else. Something in the way she watched him, not with awe, not with the nervous admiration most lieutenants had around generals, but with something colder, sharper, measured, like she knew him, like she was waiting. Was she part of that team? No, couldn't be. Echo. That was the sniper's Cody name, the one he'd watched disappear into a desert storm. Scarred face, ice blue eyes. They'd said she was dead, but this woman Jennings looked like her. You never forget those eyes. His hand, still holding the pen, had started to tremble ever so slightly. He steadied it. Years of control kicked in. His face returned to neutral. He forced the pen to the paper, consigned with deliberate grace. But in his mind, alarms were going off. This couldn't be coincidence. She wasn't a random pick. Someone put her here. As she turned to leave the stage, their eyes locked again. Just for a second. Just enough. Her lips didn't move. But her eyes said it all. You remember me. And he did. But not from a personnel file or academy roster. From blood and fire. From a night where the sky turned black and everything was lost. From classified nightmares he thought had been buried a decade ago. As the ceremony ended, applause filled the room, but Harlan didn't hear it. He stood still, frozen in place, scanning the back of Jennings' head as she disappeared down the Nar. Aisle. His aide approached. Sir, everything all right? He blinked, then nodded slowly. Get me her file. Full service history. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But the aide didn't know Harlan had already reviewed every officer assigned to the event. Jennings wasn't on the original list. Someone had added her. Quietly, deliberately. That night, back in his office, Harlan poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a glass and opened a secured laptop. He typed in her name. Access denied. He tried again with an override code from his clearance level. Still denied. Restricted. That wasn't normal. He sat back in his chair, staring at the ring burned into his memory. That single image had reignited a chapter he thought closed forever. His gut said danger. His instincts said unfinished mission. Somewhere, deep inside the Pentagon's marble halls, a ghost had walked back into his life, and she wanted something. But what? Redemption? Revenge? Or the truth? Whatever it was, he knew this much. Lauti. Kara Jennings wasn't just some junior officer handing him a pen. She was a living reminder of something he tried to forget, and she wasn't done yet. General Marcus Harlan didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in his private study, the Pentagon file request for LT. Kara Jennings still showing access denied on his secure laptop. His drink had long gone warm. A second glass sat untouched. The hum of the overhead light was the only sound in the room, but in Harlan's mind, a different sound echoed: distant gunfire, distorted voices, static on comms, and the unshakable memory of a stormy desert night from 10 years ago. Syria. 2015. Operation Shatterpoint. Officially, it never happened. But unofficially, it changed everything. The Reaper teams weren't regular soldiers. They were ghost units formed from the shadows of black-budget operations. Each member was pulled from different branches, often with no formal ties to their previous identities. No names, no families. Just call signs. And Reaper Team 7 had been the best of them. Led by a gruff SEAL known as Hammer, the team included 5 members: Raven, Shade, Torch, Brick, and the most lethal of them all, Echo. He remembered her the most. She didn't talk much, not unless necessary. Average height, lean, eyes sharp enough to slice through fog. A long scar ran from her temple down to her jawline, old, deep, and unhealed by plastic surgery. She wore it like a warning. Sniper by specialty. Ghost by nature. No one really knew where she came from. Rumors said she was former CIA, burned during a failed op in Chechnya. Others claimed she volunteered for Reaper service after her entire unit was killed in Somalia. Harlan never asked. Echo wasn't the type to offer stories anyway. What he did know was that she didn't miss. The mission had seemed simple. Extract an informant embedded within a weapons smuggling ring connected to several Middle Eastern militias. But intelligence turned sour fast. The informant had already been compromised. The team walked straight into an ambush. He still remembered the drone feed blinking to black. Then radio silence. Team Reaper 7 is off comes The operations officer said flatly. No, Harlan had whispered. They're alive? Get me eyes back now. It was chaos. A sandstorm rolled in from the east, cutting visibility to zero. Air support was delayed. By the time they reconnected with one of the Reaper channels, only static answered. One last voice had broken through, faint, scratchy, barely audible. Echo's voice. They set us up. They know exfil. I repeat, we've been. Static swallowed the rest. Then silence. They sent in a recovery team 2 days later. The safe house was obliterated. Blood, bullet casings, burned gear. No bodies. No echo. Nothing. The Pentagon wrote them off. Presumed KIA. The file was sealed. All members of Reaper Team 7 were declared lost in action. But Harlan always had doubts, because there was something odd about the mission's prep, especially the way it was rushed. The target's name was changed last minute. Coordinates. Rerouted. He had pushed back, questioned the intelligence, but was told it came from the top. No names, just the top. He buried it like everything else. Until today. Until she handed him that pen. And wore that ring. He opened an encrypted archive in his laptop, one he hadn't touched in years. Inside were unofficial mission photos, scraps from old drone feeds, and personal notes he wasn't supposed to keep. He scrolled until he found it. Team Reaper 7, Syria loadout photo. The team stood shoulder to shoulder, faces mostly obscured by gear. But Echo wasn't masked. She stood slightly apart from the others, rifle resting across her chest, one hand visible, the other gripping her vest. Zoom in. There it was. The Reaper ring glinting on her trigger finger. He enhanced the image, just like the one he saw today. Skull, black inlay, custom forged. That design had been chosen by Hammer himself. They each received one during initiation. Echo never took hers off, and then he noticed something else. A scar. Same place. Same angle. From temple to JAWLINE. It was her. Kara Jennings was Echo. There was no doubt in his mind now. But why was she here? Why now? She had vanished for a decade. She could have changed her name, started a new life, disappeared into the wind like any former ghost operative. Instead, she reappeared under a different name, in uniform, under his command, at a public ceremony wearing the ring. That wasn't an accident. That was a message. He picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't used in years. It rang. Once. Yeah? Answered a gravelly voice. Reyes, Harlan said. She's alive. A pause. Who? Admiral Reyes replied. But his tone wasn't surprised. It was guarded. You know who? Echo. She was at the Pentagon today. Right in front of me. Same face. Same ring. New name. Kara Jennings. More silence. She's not supposed to be anywhere near DC, Reyes finally muttered. What the hell is she doing? That's what I'm asking you, Harlan snapped. You told me they were all dead. They were, Reyes said, too quickly. No bodies. Just burned ruins and a sandstorm. And you pulled the recovery team out after 12 hours. Don't insult me. Reyes let out a heavy sigh. Listen, Harlan. Whatever she's doing, it's her mission now. Don't get involved. You buried the whole team, Harlan said. Now she's back. And I'm guessing she didn't come here for a damn ceremony. Let it go, Reyes warned. For your sake. But Harlan couldn't. He ended the call and stared at the photo again. If Echo had survived, who else did? And what had really happened? That night in Syria, the mission wasn't just compromised. It was sabotaged. He was sure of it now. The intel changes, the blackouts, the buried files, none of it made sense unless someone wanted that team gone. And Echo, Jennings had returned, not to reunite, But to expose, she was baiting him, leading him, drawing him back into the shadows he once swore off. And yet, part of him welcomed it, because if even one Reaper was still alive, then the truth might be, and Marcus Harlan was no longer willing to let it die in the dark. At precisely 0600 hours the next morning, General Marcus Harlan was already behind his desk, running a search through the Joint Personnel Database. He had typed Jennings, Kara a dozen times. Each result gave him the same sanitized version of a military record. Lieutenant, U.S. Army Logistics Command. Commissioned in 2018. Graduated top 5% from Fort Gregg Adams. 4 years stationed at Fort Bliss. 1 year at Fort Meade. No combat deployments. No special assignments. No disciplinary actions. Nothing but clean, squeaky clean service. Too clean. There were no commendations, no notable missions, no field assignments, only base-to-base administrative duty. Most officers had scars in their files. Kara Jennings's file was spotless, like someone had scrubbed it by design. That wasn't how the real Army worked. He cross-referenced her photo with archived facial recognition databases, covert ones, not available to standard military channels. The kind built for identifying foreign spies, not U.S. personnel. He fed in a photo of Jennings from yesterday's ceremony. The system took 30 seconds longer than usual. Match found. Alias, Echo former. Designation, classified, Reaper Team 7, last recorded operation. Northern Syria, March 2015. Status, Kai exhaled through his teeth. She was Echo, confirmed, but someone had falsified a new identity for her, complete with training records and base histories. That took more than access. It required authorization, the kind only a few people in the Pentagon even had. He leaned back in his chair, staring at her photograph. Her expression hadn't changed in 10 years. That same distant look. Focused, but detached. The eyes of someone who'd seen too much and expected even worse. What did she want? She hadn't come to hide. She could have stayed invisible forever. But instead, she made herself seen. She stood in front of him, wearing that ring like a flare. A quiet threat or a signal. Harlan clicked into the personnel tracker and located her current assignment. Pentagon Logistics Room 2B South, 4th floor, Wing C. She wasn't in combat anymore, just a paper pusher. But with a Reaper's discipline, that role could be a cover or a calculated move. He needed to see her again, but not as a general. Not in a briefing room. In person. Alone. He sent a discreet message through his aide, requesting LT Jennings report to his office at 0900 for a logistics review. Standard. Routine. Non-threatening. At 0858. She arrived. She entered with perfect posture, uniform pressed, regulation haircut, no jewelry. The ring was gone. Her expression was unreadable. Lieutenant Jennings, he said evenly. Have a seat. Yes, sir. She sat, hands folded neatly on her lap. Not a hint of nervousness. Not a twitch. Her eyes were locked on him, steady and still. I wanted to personally thank you for your role in yesterday's event, he began. Glad to serve, sir, she replied, tone measured. He leaned forward. You wore a ring yesterday. A silver one. A long pause. No, sir. Must have been a reflection off the pen, she answered coolly. He smiled without warmth. I was Reaper adjacent, Lieutenant. You think I don't know that ring? Still, no change in her face. Reaper Team 7 was declared clear. Yes, he said. I was there when the reports came in. Then we agree, she said simply. It was a chess game now. You were Echo, he said. I remember the scar. I remember your voice. I remember what happened in Syria. She looked away for the first time. Not out of shame, but calculation. You remember the version they let you remember, she said. His jaw tightened. I saw the ruins. I read the reports. She reached into her uniform pocket and placed a small black flash drive on his desk. I read more. He didn't touch it. What's on it? Redacted comms. Mission briefings. Internal memos. Audio logs. All things that don't exist officially. Where'd you get this? I was there, she said. I crawled out of that hellhole with a collapsed lung and a bullet in my thigh. I buried 2 teammates with my own hands. The rest were taken. Taken? Harlan asked. They weren't killed. They were captured, sold, disavowed. When I came home, I tried to report it. They told me Reaper 7 didn't exist. They called me unstable, assigned me a handler. Then they offered me a new life. He picked up the flash drive now. Why now? He asked, why appear again? Why me? You were the only one who hesitated, she said. You asked questions back then. You didn't order the mission, you received it. That doesn't mean I'm clean, he said. No one is, she replied. But you might still care. He studied her. Her voice hadn't cracked once. Her posture hadn't shifted. But behind her calm was fury controlled, weaponized, years in the making. You planning to blow this wide open? He asked. I'm planning to finish what they buried. Revenge? Closure? She stood. I've said what I needed to. The rest is up to you. As she reached the door, he called out, Echo. She paused. He stood, walked to her, and held out his hand. She hesitated and placed the ring in his palm. He turned it over. Same skull. Same grooves. Same flame-etched border. Not a replica. The original. She didn't say anything else. She walked out of his office, leaving him alone with a Reaper ring and a flash drive that could set Washington on fire. He looked down at the ring. She'd survived hell, rebuilt a life, returned under a mask. And now she'd handed him a choice. Expose the truth or continue the lie. He plugged the drive into his secure terminal. The first file opened. Echo's voice, raw and urgent. They knew we'd find it. That's why they sent us. They wanted. You's gone. If anyone hears this, we didn't die in a firefight. We were silenced. Then static. Then silence. Harlan leaned back. The war wasn't over. Not yet. The ring was gone the next time he saw her. General Marcus. Harlan stood just outside the Pentagon's South Logistics Wing at precisely 0700 hours, sipping black coffee from a paper cup while watching officers filter through the corridor. A few offered salutes. Others passed without notice. But when Lt. Kara Jennings approached, uniform perfect, hair tight, expression unreadable, there was no ring on her finger. Of course there wasn't. She had made her statement already. Now she was vanishing again, just like she had 10 years ago. She moved like a soldier, but not like a junior officer. She didn't fumble with folders. She didn't talk too much. She didn't check her phone or stumble with her badge. She was controlled always. If someone bumped into her, she adjusted without reaction. Not startled, not fazed. Combat reflexes disguised beneath paperwork. He followed her discreetly down the hallway, stopping near the water cooler to watch. She entered a quiet office, tapped her ID on a scanner, and disappeared behind a door marked Restricted Logistics Archive. The room had no windows, one entry, no posted guards. He knew the room. It wasn't important, at least not publicly. But to someone like Echo, it would be the perfect place to hide in plain sight. Just data terminals, inventory manifests, and old supply chain logs, or so people thought. Harlan walked back to his office, each step heavy with doubt. He knew now the past hadn't stayed buried, and Jennings' Echo wasn't done. By the time he reached his desk, he had already made a decision. He was going to watch everything on the flash drive the moment he plugged it into his encrypted laptop. The screen flickered. A simple folder appeared. Reaper_7_ files. Inside were 5 audio files, 3 documents, and 1 video, each labeled with only a date. He clicked the first audio file. The timestamp read, March 17th, 2015, 23:48. Crackling static. Echo's voice. Team 7 has made contact. Target location confirmed. Intel package was wrong. Enemy strength double the estimate. Requesting confirmation on extraction route. Charlie 7. Unidentified male voice. Negative. Extraction route compromised. Switch to Charlie 8. Echo, urgent. That's a trap. Repeat. Extraction 8 is open desert. 0 cover. We're not making it out. Static. Different voice, this one flat and cold. Echo, proceed as ordered. Echo, sir, who is this? Silence, then click. Channel dead. Harlan's hand clenched the mouse. The voice wasn't familiar, but it didn't sound like any regular field commander. Cold, detached, not invested in survival, only in containment. He played the second file. This time, multiple voices. Echo, Raven, Hammer, fighting, screaming. Echo yelling coordinates. Gunfire. Then her voice again. They're not pulling us out. We're expendable. They sent us to die because we saw too much. Hammer's down. Shade is hit. If anyone ever hears this, don't believe the reports. They want us gone. Then silence. He sat back. The world felt different now. Harlan had believed Reaper 7 was overrun. He'd carried the guilt for years, wondering if he should have pushed harder, sent an unauthorized bird, pulled strings. But now he knew they were never meant to come home. He opened the video file next. Grainy, low resolution. Probably shot from a body cam or helmet rig. The timestamp placed it a few hours before the teen's blackout. It showed Echo moving through a dark tunnel. Torch held a light up front. Behind them, Shade scanned their rear. They moved silently, trained, fast, focused. Then they reached a room. Inside were crates stacked high, military style. Echo scanned one label with a flashlight. It read, Property of Kingston Strategic Solutions, U.S. Defense Contractor. Below that, Payload Class 4, Thermal Weapons. Harlan froze. Kingston Strategic had been the subject of a quiet investigation. A few years back, alleged unauthorized arms transfers, but nothing was ever proven. The probe ended quickly. Buried, just like Reaper 7. He opened the third document. It was a PDF memo labeled Immediate Termination Directive, RS-7. It was short, clinical, but devastating. Reaper 7 has made unauthorized visual contact with Tier 4 assets connected to private defense channels. Due to the sensitivity of said programs, containment has been approved. Terminate exfil route. Remove operatives. Deny all affiliations. Proceed with Reaper Shadow Protocol. No signature, no header. Just language that reeked of deniable command chains. He leaned back, stunned. This wasn't just a tragic mission failure. It was an execution. Jennings had found the documents. Maybe she had copied them before her team was hit. Maybe she spent the last 10 years hacking, bribing, risking everything to assemble them piece by piece. However she got them, she now had the ammunition, and she had handed it all to him, because she couldn't fire the first shot, not without being erased all over again. But Harlan? He still had rank, a voice, a reputation. He could be the match. He closed the laptop and stared at the ring on his desk. The weight of it felt heavier than metal. For 10 years, he'd stood inside the system that buried Reaper 7. Without realizing, He'd shaken hands with men who made the call, smiled for photos, signed off on projects. Some of those documents, his name might even be on them. But Jennings hadn't come to kill him. She'd come to wake him up. He stood and walked to his safe, pulled out an old lockbox, and opened it. Inside were his own war medals, old maps, a faded mission journal. Buried at the bottom was a coin, his first airborne unit's insignia. He placed the Reaper ring next to it. Then he picked up the phone and called the inspector general's office. Need to request a private security review of a black file operation. No aides, no leaks. Full discretion. There was a pause. Sir, that request needs authorization from... I'm the authorization, he snapped. You'll have everything you need in 1 hour. He hung up before they could respond. Jennings had vanished again, but she'd left him the truth. Now, he had a choice to make. Expose it and burn everything down, or bury it and let Reaper 7 die a second time. But this time, he would not look away. The sun hung low over Washington, casting long shadows over the Pentagon's granite face. Inside, General Marcus Harlan stood alone in the situation briefing room, once a place of strategy and power, now a vault for ghosts. In front of him, a large monitor displayed 3 documents from Jennings's flash drive. The lights were dim, but he didn't need brightness to see clearly now. He had stared into the truth and had stared back. The memo authorizing Reaper Shadow Protocol. The video showing illegal Kingston strategic crates. The audio logs capturing the final moments of Team 7. All undeniable. All damning. He turned as the door opened. Colonel Dana Fielding entered, face tight with concern. She had served under Harlan for years, loyal, capable, and one of the few he trusted completely. She nodded once before stepping inside and locking the door behind her. You told me this was urgent, she said, walking toward the table. Harlan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he handed her a tablet loaded with the decrypted files. Play the 3rd recording, he said. She tapped it. Echo's voice, urgent, distant. I repeat, this wasn't intel failure. This was containment. We found crates with American contractor labels Kingston. This mission was designed to burn us. Raven's dead, Hammer's breathing but unconscious. I've got Torch and Shade dragging Brick. If anyone finds this Reaper 7 didn't die in combat, we were erased. The silence after the playback was colder than the room itself. Fielding looked up, jaw tight. Jesus Christ. She survived, Harlan said. Echo. Jennings. She found all this, and somehow she got it to me. How the hell did she pull this off? She didn't, he replied. Not entirely. Someone helped her. She didn't. Get Kingston strategic intel, black directives, and sealed files without support. There's a network somewhere, rogue or internal. Or both. Fielding looked shaken but composed. If even half of this is real, it's enough to take down people at the top. Kingston's leadership. Hell, maybe even members of the Joint Chiefs. It is real, he said. I checked the audio signatures. Locations match classified. Mission logs. And the time-stamped photos from her video. Place them within the exact safe house coordinates used in Operation Shatterpoint. He slid a folder across the table. I'm taking it to the Inspector General. Fielding didn't reach for it. Do you really think they'll touch this? You're accusing Kingston, one of the biggest contractors on the East Coast, of treason and black site execution. You think the duties watchdogs won't just sit on this until it dies? I'm not giving them the chance, Harlan said. I already sent encrypted duplicates to 2 retired federal judges, 3 investigative journalists, and a Senate oversight staffer I trust. She stared at him. You just lit a fuse. I didn't come this far to watch the match rot in my hand. A long pause followed. Then she nodded. So what now? I need to find Jennings before someone else does, he said. You saw how clean her file was? That means someone buried her, then let her resurface for a reason. She's bait ore. She's already been targeted again. I'll run a silent trace on her last known access badge, and Dana off the grid. No digital footprint. Go old school. Copy that. As she left, Harlan opened his secure line again. The number he dialed hadn't been used in 5 years. It rang 3 times, and a voice answered. You shouldn't be calling me. Too late, Harlan said. She's alive, echo. A pause. I know. He froze. You knew she was alive? I knew she wasn't confirmed dead. There's a difference. You sat in that debrief and signed her death warrant. She walked away. It makes her dangerous. You don't understand what she has. I do now, Harlan snapped. And I've already sent it to half the damn hill. That was a mistake. You knew they buried them. All of them. A heavy sigh followed. It wasn't supposed to be this way. What was it supposed to be? Harlan asked. Reaper Team 7 dies in silence, so Kingston can keep funneling thermal. Weapons to warlords? You think it's just about money? The voice growled. It was about control. That operation was bigger than you know. Kingston was the shell company, but the tech was DARPA grade. Biological thermal weapons. Unsanctioned testing in foreign fields. Reaper 7 saw something they weren't meant to. And instead of saving them, Harlan said coldly, you murdered them. Another pause. You don't want to be caught in this fire, Marcus. Walk away. But Harlan didn't flinch. She handed me the match, he said. And now it's already burning. He ended the call. Outside, the wind picked up. Clouds gathered over the city like they sensed what was coming. That evening, news broke quietly. A leak anonymous reported internal memos suggesting Kingston Strategic was under investigation for unauthorized arms shipments. It didn't say who filed the complaint. It didn't say what kind of weapons. But it was the first crack. By morning. An independent military journalist had uploaded a heavily redacted PDF titled Reaper 7, The Mission That Never Was. It featured grainy stills from the helmet cam video. A blurred face echo stood in the background. The video's authenticity was under review, but insiders began whispering. The military forums exploded overnight. #Reaper 7 trended online. The story had begun to leak into the bloodstream of the country. But Jennings? She was nowhere to be found. Harlan sat in his apartment at 2 a.m., watching news tickers roll across the screen. He knew this wasn't over. This wasn't the peak of the story. This was just the pressure point. Someone would retaliate. People didn't lose billions without striking back. He opened his safe again, pulled out the Reaper ring, and placed it back on his desk. Everything started with that ring, a symbol of loyalty, of sacrifice. Of betrayal. He stared at it for a long time, and for the first time in 10 years, Marcus Harlan didn't feel like a general anymore. He felt like a soldier again, and the war had just come. Home. 3 days after the leak, Kara Jennings walked through a crowded train station in Richmond, Virginia, wearing a sun-bleached baseball cap and a denim jacket that didn't quite fit. Her face was obscured behind thick-rimmed glasses. Her gait, slowed by an old duffel bag dragging slightly behind her. She no longer moved like a soldier. That was deliberate. The girl in that helmet cam video had become a ghost. A trending hashtag. A myth resurrected. Echo lives, some claimed. Others believed the footage was AI-generated. But in dark government halls and corporate boardrooms, no one was debating. They knew exactly who she was, and worse, what she had. Jennings slipped into a bathroom stall near the back of the station. She locked the door, dropped the bag at her feet, and unzipped the lining. Inside, a burner phone, a compact pistol with one loaded mag, and a steel flash drive she hadn't yet used. Her fingers hesitated over it. She hadn't sent everything to Harlan. That was intentional. If the military turned on him, and they would, he needed plausible deniability. The real payload, the one that connected Kingston Strategic to a covert biothermal weapons division operating under the name Project Reclaimer, was still in her hands. With it came a full list of names: field testers, scientists, handlers, and financiers. But the most important name, General Elias Reyes. He had approved the termination directive. He had signed the supply contracts with Kingston. And Jennings had photographic evidence of him inside the Reclaimer testing site during Reaper 7's doomed mission. She leaned against the stall wall and closed her eyes. For 10 years, she'd disappeared. Now, every camera felt like a scope. Every cough behind her sounded like a silencer. Trust didn't come easy. Not after your own flag left you to die. The burner phone buzzed. Blocked number. She answered without speaking. A voice crackled. Bluebird is circling. You're not safe. She recognized the voice. Rook, her only contact in what was left of the shadow net. An old hacker who once pulled intel for Reaper missions. Jennings had never met him face to face, but his voice had saved her more than once. Where? She asked. Exit East Tunnel. Trash bin 2. Gray hoodie with a beacon. I'll lead you to a safe drop. Jennings ended the call. She moved fast-changed jackets, tucked her weapon close, and made her way through the terminal. But as she reached the exit tunnel, her instincts screamed. A man leaned casually by a vending machine. Plain clothes, thick wrists. Military posture, trying not to look like he belonged. Another stood near the information kiosk, pretending to check his phone. Eyes flicked to her. Too quick. Too focused. They were here. She turned sharply and ducked. Down a side hallway, weaving between janitorial carts and security barriers. The echo of footsteps behind her confirmed it. They'd made her. Jennings bolted down the stairwell, 2 steps at a time. Her breath tightened. She reached the service tunnel. Ahead, the trash bin. She flung open the lid. The hoodie was there. She pulled it on, and a tiny ping in her ear activated. East. Freight corridor. Cut left in 7 steps. Ignore the first door. Take the second. Rook was guiding her live. Jennings obeyed, sliding into a maintenance hallway just as boots pounded the corridor behind her. She slipped through the second door, locked it from the inside, and collapsed against the wall. She exhaled slowly, but only for a moment, because this wasn't over. Across town, Marcus Harlan sat in a black SUV, parked in a nondescript alley outside. An abandoned library, the meeting point Rook had chosen. It was old school, analog, intentionally off-grid. Surveillance drones avoided the zone due to interference caused by outdated electrical systems. The perfect place for a ghost to appear. He stared at the ring on his finger. The Reaper insignia shimmered faintly under the dashboard light. He hadn't worn it since Jennings handed it to him days ago. Now it fit again, at exactly 8:03 p.m. Headlights flicked twice from a beat-up Honda across the street. The signal. He stepped out. A side door in the library creaked open. Inside, dust filled the air like smoke. Bookshelves stood like ruined pillars. And there she was, Kara Jennings, leaning against a wall, arms crossed, eyes hard. They stared at each other for a moment. He broke the silence. You're bleeding. She looked down. Her forearm had a long scrape. She hadn't noticed. Nothing new. He reached into his coat, pulled out a packet of gauze, then tossed it to her. She caught it without looking. I saw the footage, he said. I know, she replied. The leak was part of the plan. You baited them. I wanted to see. Who'd come for me first, contractors or brass? He nodded. It's both. She chuckled, dry and low. Of course it is. He took a breath. I need the rest of the data. She didn't move. Jennings, he pressed. If they get to you before you upload, this all dies? You think I don't know that? She snapped. You think I haven't watched them kill every one of us? Brick, Shade, even Raven. Survived the ambush for 3 hours. Long enough for Kingston to interrogate her. Then they dumped her in the desert like garbage. His jaw clenched. I'm sorry. She stepped closer. No, you're not, but you can be. She pulled a steel flash drive from her jacket and held it out. You take this, and you don't flinch. He took it. On here, she said, is Proof. Reyes met with Kingston CEOs inside Reclaimer's test facilities in 2014. There's footage of war crimes covered as field simulations and signed contracts for pathogen-laced thermal payloads tested in unmarked conflict zones. They weren't just testing weapons. She looked him in the eye. They were testing civilians. The words hit him like a blow. He pocketed the drive. What about you? He asked. Where will you go? Does it matter? She said, rushing past him. They'll come either way. She paused at the door. But now, they'll have to look over their shoulders too. Then she was gone. By morning, a second video surfaced, footage of General Elias Reyes leaving a Kingston compound in 2015. Escorted by armed guards. His face was unmistakable. The footage was clear. Suddenly, the whispers turned into demands. The Senate launched a preliminary hearing. 2 Kingston board members resigned. Reyes issued a public denial, claiming deep fakes and enemy manipulation. But behind the scenes, the machine was panicking. Someone had punched through the armor, and in the Pentagon, Harlan stood before a private military tribunal, wearing his dress blues, the Reaper ring still on his hand. I will answer all your questions, he said, but not behind closed doors. I want it on record. I want it under oath. And I want it public. The silence in the chamber said everything. The war Jennings started wasn't over, but it had a voice now. The morning light burned through the blinds of General Marcus Harlan's apartment, but he barely noticed. His eyes were glued to the TV screen as the news anchors dissected every leaked detail of the Reaper 7, scandal like vultures circling fresh carrion. The weight of the Reaper ring on his finger felt like a curse. His phone buzzed incessantly. Texts from aides, anonymous tips, and one terse message from Kara Jennings. They're coming. Watch your back. Harlan swallowed hard. He was no stranger to danger, but this was different. This wasn't a battlefield marked by sand and gunfire. This was a war waged in whispers, shadows, and betrayal. The Senate hearing had begun 2 days ago. The panel grilled Harlan relentlessly. Their questions veiled attacks designed to undermine his credibility. Why didn't you report these allegations sooner? How do we know these files are authentic? Is this just a personal vendetta? They painted him as a disgruntled officer grasping at ghosts. Every press conference turned him into a target for ridicule and suspicion. But beneath the surface, a real enemy mobilized. Late that evening, as Harlan returned from a secret meeting with a trusted journalist, he noticed the black SUV parked outside his building. The engine was off. The windows tinted, but the presence was unmistakable. He quickened his pace. Inside his apartment, the door was slightly ajar. His heart pounded. He slipped inside silently, scanning every shadow. His gaze locked on a shattered picture frame on the floor. The photo inside showed him and Jennings at a military ceremony years ago, smiling before all the lies. A note lay next to it, written in black ink. Stop digging, or this will be your last step. Harlan clenched his fists, anger and fear clashing in his chest. He called Fielding immediately. "We've been compromised," he said. She was already on her way. Minutes later, she burst through the door, eyes sharp and tense. "We can't trust anyone anymore. Not even inside the Pentagon. We expose this," he said, "and they'll come for us both." Her voice dropped, cold but steady. "Then we make sure they don't win." Meanwhile, across town, Jennings navigated a maze of back alleys, her senses razor-sharp. She'd lost count of how many times she'd changed her appearance over the past week. The safe house was compromised. Someone inside her trusted network was leaking information. She ducked into a nondescript diner, her eyes scanning for the signal Rook had promised. A man wearing a worn leather jacket and a faded red baseball cap. There. He sat alone, sipping coffee. She approached cautiously. "Rook," she whispered. He looked up, eyes wary. "They're closing in," she said. "Who?" "Reyes, Kingston, and their puppets everywhere." Rook nodded grimly. "They've already assassinated 2 journalists connected to this story." Jennings swallowed hard. "They want silence, but they can't have it." The words hung heavy in the air. Back at the Pentagon, Harlan and Fielding dug through classified channels, tracing the source of the breach. Every lead pointed toward a shadowy cabal within the Defense Department itself, an unholy alliance between corporate interests and rogue officials. Their investigation was painstaking but relentless. Days blurred into nights. Then came the first attempt. It was subtle at first. A car accident staged on a rainy highway. Harlan's vehicle narrowly missed a runaway semi-trailer. Brake lines cut. A near-fatal crash averted by mere seconds. Fielding's own apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, but files rearranged. A clear message. The walls closed in. The Senate hearing continued, but the public mood shifted. Social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForReaper7 and #ExposeTheTruth. Protests formed outside government buildings. Calls for Reyes's resignation grew louder. Harlan found himself at the center of a storm, and the more he pushed, the more dangerous it became. One evening, Fielding arrived at his door, breathless and pale. "We lost contact with Jennings. She was supposed to send me a location." Harlan's stomach dropped. "She's missing," Fielding said quietly. "I have to find her." Fielding nodded. Together, they coordinated with Rook, tracing Jennings's last known movements. The trail was cold, but clues surfaced. A motel. Room abandoned in a hurry. A cryptic message left on a payphone. Whispers of an underground safehouse. As they closed in, a terrifying realization dawned. Jennings was being hunted by more than just military contractors. Shadowy assassins moved with surgical precision. Government agents who operated outside any law. Harlan's phone buzzed again. The caller ID was blocked. A voice whispered, low and chilling, "You've crossed the line, General. Back off, or she dies." The line went dead. Harlan's hand shook, but he steeled himself. In a dilapidated warehouse on the city's outskirts, Jennings crouched behind a stack of rusted crates. She clutched a small handgun, eyes scanning for movement. Her breathing was steady, but her mind raced. She had made a choice. To fight. To bring the truth into the light, no matter the cost. Suddenly, footsteps echoed, more than one. She wasn't alone. They moved in. She took aim. The first shot rang out. The firefight was brutal, but brief. Jennings's training kept her alive, but she knew reinforcements were coming. She sent a coded message to Harlan and Fielding, detailing her location. Minutes later, headlights flooded the warehouse's cracked windows. Harlan and Fielding arrived, weapons drawn. They rescued Jennings amid gunfire and chaos. As they escaped, Jennings turned to Harlan. "It's not over," she said. "No," he replied, eyes hard. "Not by a long shot." The war for truth had begun in earnest, Enemies lurked in every shadow. But Marcus Harlan and Kara Jennings, Reaper 7's ghost, and the general who refused to forget, would not back down. For the fallen. For the betrayed. For justice. The rain pounded down like a funeral dirge as General Marcus Harlan drove toward the secret hearing room deep within the Capitol's basement. The Reaper ring on his finger felt heavier than ever. It was more than a symbol now. It was a promise. To the dead, to the living, to the truth. Behind him, Kara Jennings sat in the passenger seat, her face a mask of exhaustion and resolve. The scars on her forearm were still fresh, a reminder that their enemies were relentless. But today, they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to expose a conspiracy that reached the highest echelons of power. The hearing was secret. The room filled with a select group of senators, legal advisors, and investigators. Cameras were barred. The public wouldn't hear this testimony for weeks, if at all. But Harlan and Jennings knew the stakes. This was the last chance to force accountability. Jennings leaned forward. They'll try to discredit me. Call me a traitor or a liar. Harlan gave her a grim nod. We'll have your back. The door clicked shut. The hearing began. The first witness was Jennings, herself. She recounted the mission with surgical precision. The deployment to Syria, the discovery of illegal biothermal weapons under the guise of contractor shipments, and the betrayal by those who ordered her team's containment. Her voice never wavered, even as she detailed the harrowing moments of losing teammates, crawling through rubble with a bullet lodged in her thigh. She described how Kingston Strategic and General Elias Reyes orchestrated a cover-up, including the elimination of operatives and silencing of whistleblowers. Questions were sharp, but Jennings answered everyone, unwavering. Harlan followed, corroborating her testimony with the classified files from the flash drive. His military bearing lent weight to her words. He didn't sugarcoat the failures. His guilt was raw and honest. But as the hours dragged on, the hearing room grew tense. Opposing counsel pushed back fiercely. They attacked Jennings's character, questioned the authenticity of the files, and hinted at political motivations. Senators connected to defense contractors subtly tried to steer the conversation away from the heart of the matter. The hearing was a battle of attrition. In the shadows beyond the hearing room, a different war raged. Kingston Strategic's board convened emergency meetings. Reyes faced internal pressure to resign, but his connections in the Pentagon shielded him. Behind closed doors, orders went out. Discredit Jennings, sabotage Harlan's reputation, and silence anyone who dared speak. That night, Harlan returned to his apartment, only to find a charred envelope on his doorstep. Photos of Jennings's family, threats masked as warnings. He called Fielding. They're tightening the noose. We need to get her somewhere safe, she said. But Jennings refused. I'm done running, she said. This ends now. The following day, the Senate hearing released a partial transcript to the press. It was enough to ignite a firestorm. Major news outlets picked up the story. Public outrage swelled. Protesters gathered outside government buildings demanding justice. For the first time in a decade, Reaper 7 was a household name, but with the spotlight came danger. Weeks later, during a recess in the hearing, Harlan and Jennings met in a secure location to plan their next move. Jennings handed him a dossier thick with evidence, bank transfers, encrypted emails, video logs proving direct collusion between Kingston and high-ranking officials. Is the smoking gun, she said. But if this leaks too soon, we both go down. Harlan nodded. We'll release it when we have protection. Their plan was bold. Leak the evidence to trusted journalists simultaneously with the hearings. Conclusion. Transparency was their weapon against censorship. On the final day of the hearing, Jennings took the stand once more. This time she was calm but fierce. She described the systemic corruption that allowed contractors to operate unchecked, the complicity of military leaders, and the human cost of their greed. Her testimony was interrupted by an emergency announcement. Security rushed in. Reyes had just been detained on charges related to the investigation. The room erupted. Outside, reporters clamored for statements. Protesters chanted. The government scrambled to contain the fallout. Harlan and Jennings watched from behind a secure window. The fight was far from over, but they had won a critical battle. Jennings turned to Harlan. "What happens now?" He smiled, weary but hopeful. "Now we make sure it never happens again." In the weeks that followed, Kingston Strategic faced multiple federal investigations. Reyes was indicted. Policies were enacted to increase oversight of military contractors. Jennings was offered protection and a new role advising on ethical military practices. Harlan retired with honor, dedicating himself to reform. But most importantly, Reaper 7's story was finally told. Years later, a statue was unveiled at Arlington Cemetery. Honoring the Here is Part 8, The Final Reckoning. The thrilling conclusion with exactly 1,250 words. Part 8, The Final Reckoning. Rain fell in relentless sheets as General Marcus Harlan drove toward a hidden chamber deep within the Capitol's bowels. The Reaper ring on his finger was no longer just a symbol, it was a vow. To the fallen, to the truth, to Justice. Kara Jennings sat beside him, her gaze distant but resolute. Her arm bore fresh scars, the price of survival. Tonight, they weren't just fugitives or whistleblowers. They were the last hope to bring a conspiracy buried beneath layers of lies into the light. The hearing was secret, guarded by trusted senators and investigators. Cameras barred. The public, unaware. But this was their final stand. Jennings spoke first. She detailed the mission: deployment to Syria, discovery of illegal biothermal weapons disguised as contractor shipments, and the brutal betrayal by her own command ordered to contain her team permanently. Her voice was steady, cutting through every attempt to dismiss her story as fantasy or vendetta. Harlan followed, confirming every detail with hard evidence from the flash drive video footage, internal memos, financial records implicating Kingston Strategic and General Elias Reyes. In orchestrating the cover-up and silencing whistleblowers, opposing counsel fought fiercely to discredit Jennings, challenging her character, the authenticity of files, suggesting political motives. Senators, with ties to defense contractors, tried to redirect focus. The hearing became a grueling war of attrition. Behind the scenes, Kingston's board scrambled to protect their empire. Reyes resisted pressure to resign, shielded by powerful allies. Threats and intimidation increased. Harlan's apartment was vandalized. Photos of Jennings's family sent with chilling warnings. Fielding urged protecting Jennings, but she refused. "I'm done running," she said. "This ends now." Partial transcripts leaked, igniting public outrage. Protests erupted, demanding accountability. Reaper 7 became a symbol of sacrifice and betrayal. Weeks later, planning in a secure room, Jennings handed Harlan a dossier of damning evidence: bank transfers, encrypted emails, video proof linking Kingston to government officials. "This is the smoking gun," she said. "If this leaks prematurely, we both go down." They agreed to synchronize the release with the hearing's conclusion, leveraging transparency as their shield. On the final day, Jennings returned to the stand calm, fierce. She exposed systemic corruption, military-industrial collusion, and the human cost of greed. Suddenly, security burst in. Reyes had been detained. The chamber exploded. Outside, media frenzy and protests surged. The government scrambled to contain the fallout. Harlan and Jennings watched from safety. The war was far from over, but a decisive victory had been won. "What happens now?" Jennings asked. "We make sure it never happens again," Harlan said. Weary but hopeful. In the following months, Kingston Strategic faced federal investigations. Reyes was indicted. New policies imposed oversight on contractors. Jennings was granted protection and appointed advisor on military ethics. Harlan retired with honor, dedicating himself to reform. Most importantly, Reaper 7's story was finally told. Years later, at Arlington Cemetery, a statue was unveiled honoring those lost soldiers erased but never forgotten. The Reaper ring lay embedded in the base, a lasting testament to courage, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of truth. And somewhere, beneath the quiet earth, Echo's spirit found peace.